It's incredible, Mark. What do you make of this?
Well, Neil, he's threatening the American people all the time, too. What do I make of this? I make of this that we have an imperial president, that he doesn't ever want to debate his opposition truthfully about his record or the facts. He's always demonizing, creating straw men. And this is what you do when you're a very, very powerful president of the United States. And basically, he thinks when he was reelected that whatever he decides to do is the mandate the American people gave him. But even more than his threats against Woodward, and that's what they were, and this has to be the tip of the iceberg. There must be all kinds of sleazy activity in addition to what you've mentioned here. He's threatening the American people. That's what this sequester is all about. Every time we come to a continuing resolution, that's what it's all about. When we come to a debt ceiling, that's what it's all about. The man has never come forward with a positive idea on how to resolve some of our horrific spending problems and taxing problems and borrowing and printing problems. What he does is he seeks to smear and crush his opponents if he can't buy them off, and then tell the American people, look at them over there, they're trying to destroy you. And then he goes through this list of horribles. Let me tell you something. How many reports have we heard from the news media that over 80% of the federal budget is exempt from the sequester? Over 80%. How many times have we heard the media say we're talking about $85 billion this year when the Congressional Budget Office said it's $44 billion this year? How many times have the media reported that we're talking about $22 billion when it comes to domestic spending? Not even $44 billion. And we have a pretty brand new Government Accountability Office report that tells us every single year there's an excess of $125 billion in waste and fraud in the federal government. And we have another GAO report that tells us there's hundreds of billions of dollars in savings.
I think but here's why I think what happened this week in the whole Bob Woodward thing was a seminal development in this respect. It's almost as if the boat started leaking, because it's one thing to say, oh, that's just Levin yapping about that. That's just Fox yapping about that. But this is someone like Bob Woodward who said, look, I remember what the sequestration arrangement was and what it would involve when we would revisit the issue, that there would be no talk of revenues, that it would just be a discussion of cuts, and the only debate would be the degree of those cuts and how far they go and what would be cut. Now, he's called on that. That is Woodward. Wait a minute. Wait, you've got that all wrong. And then what clearly is a very threatening email. Not too bright to put it in an email, but having said that, it sort of exposed an underbelly of something I've been telling people is there. They should be aware of, whether it's the president directly, whether it's others involved. The facts of the matter there's sort of like a wink and a nod understanding that if you dare question us, you will be screwed.
Yeah, there's no question. Look how the man, let's step back a second and put this in some context. When Obama ran for the Senate, he was smiling, waving his hands. What were his thugs doing behind the scenes? They were doing everything they could to get a hold of his opponent's divorce records, which were under seal in California. They came out. They embarrassed the family, won, and Obama didn't know anything about it. Look at this last campaign against Romney. Romney, who in my view was an inept candidate, but that aside, look at the brutality of these ads about him wanting somebody's wife to pass away because of his own policies and on, just personal vicious attacks. Obama always pretended he was above it, smiling, waving his hands, They do.
Well, Mark, what do you make of the notion, and this happens in a lot of administrations where they say, well, the president doesn't know anything about it. Each administration has its hitmen. Richard Nixon had Ehrlichman and Haldeman. You can argue the Bush administration had Dick Cheney. And that everyone is saying, well, this president's above that sort of thing. He doesn't do that sort of thing. I always come back and say, I think, yeah, whatever you argue about a nice guy and all of that, and he's a very amiable sort, wonderful family. But the fact of the matter is, and I've seen this as well as the snubber of Fox News, that look, for a guy who says he doesn't watch Fox News, doesn't like Fox News, the chatter, the mindlessness or whatever on Fox News, he knows and remembers, or his staff conveys to him, every little critical story that pops up on Fox News. So my only point in saying all of this is there's a disconnect between your surface cool and your sort of under the surface not so cool.
Because he's not a nice guy. That's the truth. He's not a nice guy. Republicans and consultants and candidates keep saying he's a nice guy, he's just over his head. He's not a nice guy, and he's over his head, and he's an ideologue. And what bothers me is you can talk about Woodward, which is appalling what was done to him. But what bothers me is this public trust he has with the American people. He's abusing it. He's lying to us constantly. He is not a nice guy. For instance, he could fire Sperling today. He'll never fire Sperling today. He just got his man Hagel through. Hagel's not a nice guy, a very nasty guy. He's now heading the Defense Department. He's surrounded by nasty people who lie to us all the time. That's the truth. And what Woodward did, and you're right, because of his past reporting, he helped bring the veil down ever so slightly, and now we're going to see what the rest of the media does. As I said on my show last night, seems to be about 80-10 defending the White House, 80 defending
that's right.
About 10%
that's right.
defending, or another 10% who are probably drunk.
Well, I don't know about the drunk thing. But Mark Levin, always good having you on. Now, whether